My guest today says his genre of music is often used for negativity and pain, but he has a passion to redeem rap and bring hope to the next generation. Andrew Russell, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Now, your interest in rap music, before you ever started rapping, you were writing rhymes in a book that nobody ever saw.
Yeah, so like rappers keep a rhyme book, and so I started in grade 8 with creative writing and said, you know what, I think I could write raps, and that's where it began, is just basic writing.
And you started becoming known for that around people, and then it started kind of taking off. But you didn't think it was really leading you in a good direction in terms of your faith anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so at the time, like Eminem was just coming out. So that's who I kind of listened to. That was my motivation. And so therefore, that's what I was putting in my mind, and that was what was coming out. And therefore, during my days in high school, during the week, I would pretend to write these raps and pretend to be this persona that I wasn't. And then on the weekend, I would go to church and it would begin again. So I really was living a hypocritical life and learned a lot through that. But that's kind of how it all kind of started with rap.
So what changed that? You know, you were heading in one direction, but you actually stopped.
Yeah, camp. Honestly, like summer camp is where I went, and a speaker was talking about the idea of identity. And I began to think after the session, he was talking about, who are you? I didn't know who I was. And I began to think, who am I? Am I this Christian guy, or am I this gangster rapper that I'm pretending to be? And through my leader that week, just really showed me that, you know, you're a child of God, and God's giving you these gifts to use for Him, not for the world and not for these, you know, evil purposes, pretty much, right? So that's what changed.
And then big doors started opening for you. You got hooked up with somebody that we've interviewed on this program before, Fresh IE, a two-time Grammy nominee rapper.
Right.
How did that happen?
He heard about me on tour. He was in Regina, and he heard about me from a friend there. I wasn't able to go to his performance, but he heard my name from this guy. And the next date, he was in BC, and a friend had just moved there to BC. Told him about me after the show. So he heard about me in 2 different provinces in 2 different nights, pretty much. And he called me up and said, I'm going to be at Youthquake at Briarcrest, where we are right now. And so I drove out in a blizzard and met him. And then in a few weeks, I was in Winnipeg recording and working with him on our label, Kingdom Music, at that time.
You know, a lot of people, when they think about ministry, they have it in certain boxes, right? So ministry is this or ministry is that. Or a lot of people maybe don't think of rap music as ministry, but it obviously is, especially to people and young people who really follow that genre of music.
Yeah.
How did you see God using that music then to impact people? What were you seeing?
Well, I mean, in Canada, the First Nations youth, their music is hip hop. Like if you talk to First Nations youth, they know about all the rappers usually. And it's because I think there's that passion to hear about the words and sharing stories, and also the struggle of inner city life. That's what rap music is really about. And so I really just saw it as a way to communicate the message of Jesus through a genre that usually has such messages of negativity and of violence and all those things, and to use it in a positive way. So they may never step foot in a church, but they could pretty much get, you know, a sermon, and they would listen to it through my rhymes. So I started to see that as an opportunity.
And, you know, as that fame took off, and, you know, you started it as ministry, but a few years in, you know, you had this night where you realized that you weren't thinking about ministry anymore. Tell me about that night.
Yeah, it was a night we were in BC, and we're in the middle of a reserve, which like pretty isolated. And I remember I was being on stage rapping one of my songs, and I just remember thinking, do I even care about these words anymore? Is this just about me? And the answer was, it was. It had become a prideful thing for me, and become a thing where I was struggling with it being, all of the show being about me. I love the lights, I love the attention, and I had just lost my focus, honestly, and just got caught up in it. And that's when I needed to take a second look at how I want to use my gift. Again, just as I did when I was younger, I needed to say, God, is this for you or is this for me? And took some time away from rap because it had become my idol. It took 2 years, yeah. And it had become my idol, and it was destroying me. It was destroying my family. I was newly married to my wife, Sue, and it had just become something where I needed to lay down and let God take, and He did. And by the grace of God, He brought it back in way better ways.
I want to talk about identity too, because you talked about, you know, God asking you who you are, and there was those early days of rap. But another part of your identity is that you're Indigenous. People looking at you may not realize that you're Métis.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about embracing that identity, because you were born to teenage parents who couldn't raise you, so you're actually raised in a white home. How do you connect then to your Indigenous roots? Yeah,
like it's something that's been a slow process, but has really escalated and jumped up since coming to Briarcrest as well. Through Aboriginal Awareness Week, through First Nations class that I was in here, I've just began to embrace it more. It's something that I kind of knew for many years. I'm not sure when I first was told that I was Aboriginal, but something I've really grown to embrace and not just think as an accident. So I used to view it as, God placed me here, but it was an accident and he had to rectify it, and that's why I was adopted. And that's not the case at all. God placed me in First Nations culture when I was born for a reason. And I've been able to discover the reasons over the years, rap music being just one of them. And so I've begun to learn more about my culture. And I didn't know much, in high school I didn't learn very much. But here I've been able to learn a lot about the hurt, the good, the bad, and that's who I am. So yeah, it's been a big part of my identity.
I love that. As you've learned more about your culture and embraced more of it, what have you fallen in love with about it?
The people. And I had that when I was with Fresh and going on reserves. You come in and I've never felt such hospitality from people that don't even know you. Just welcome you in and literally have feasts for you. I can't, the food we had was unbelievable. That's one thing I remember. And just the love. And I love that as much as people think about First Nations culture as broken families, and there's a lot of that, there's also families that are so close-knit. Like you see grandmas sitting with their grandchildren and with their families just coming together, sharing stories, passing on traditions. Mm-hmm. And that's something I've seen, the richness of that. And it's amazing just to see the close-knit that they have. Even though there's a lot of brokenness, there's a lot of unity too. What
can we do as the church? Is that we just to go out and start ministering to see that?
Yeah, I think so. Just start building relationships and talking to these kids and speaking hope, right? When we come in with the gospel, that is hope. So I've seen that. I've seen darkness in children's eyes before we perform, and you're talking to them before, and then when you perform and talk to them after, they light up with hope. But it can't just be a come in and leave type thing. People need to be, there and building in. And I've seen churches on reserves who are there for the long haul, and you see how suicide numbers have gone down because the hope is constantly there. The church is a beacon in that darkness. So I don't know, we need the people of God to be crossing these borders and get over fear, and because they're crying out. So I was on a reserve one time and we had to ask the chief for permission to rap, to share the gospel. And he, with tears in his eyes, said, please help our people, help our children. We've had these people come in, no one's helped. If you can just help our children, we don't care what you do. And that's stuck with me for years. They're crying out for help, and we need to help them. So.
That's a good word, Pastor Russell.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Love chatting with you today.
Awesome.